we realize that belief that we had, that we didn't even realize that we had, but now we do, that belief was the only thing that was actually preventing us from moving forward. Welcome to the Ryan Rice Show, where we talk about what we learned yesterday that we can apply today so that we can be better tomorrow. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. I've noticed and realized that some of the bigger advancements I've made, whether they be personal advancements or from a career or business perspective, they came from changes in what I believe to be true. And so I thought I had an idea of why things were the way that they were. And I held certain beliefs around why those things were the way that they were. But then later, I realized that not only were those beliefs I held completely false, but they were literally acting as the kryptonite to me getting to where it was that I wanted to go. And I wasn't advancing because of those beliefs that I held. And so I'm calling this "You Think You Know Why You're Stuck, but You Don't," because I want to assure you, and I'm speaking from personal experience, that if you feel stuck in something, it could be, and maybe even it's likely, that there are beliefs that you currently hold that are the precise reason that you're stuck. Who am I? My name is Ryan Rice. I am a full time real estate investor. I'm in my fourth year investing full time, and I share everything I've learned thus far with you so that hopefully you can get some lessons without the scars that I have. And I want to start this with one of my favorite quotes from Orson Scott Card. And the quote is: "We question all our beliefs except the ones we really believe in and those we never think to question." And what I love about this quote is it presents a classic dichotomy, right? Because on one hand, we need to make sure that we have strong beliefs around certain areas of our life because they propel us in the direction that we think we should be going. And on the other hand, we must question every belief that we have, especially those we strongly hold, because until we question them, we can never know if that belief is actually putting us in the right trajectory, depending on where we want to go. And what I found so far in my first almost 4 decades of life is that if I can strongly hold beliefs around my values and I operate with my values as my North Star, and I very strongly hold those, and it would be extremely difficult for those values to be broken. And so, for example, maybe the value of hard work or sincere communication or contribution or competitive excellence, whatever value it is that I hold, those are values that have constructed who it is that I am today. And I hold on to those values very tightly and I believe them very strongly. And then there are those other little beliefs I know that I'm constantly evolving. And the more I question what it is that I believe, the more I find myself growing. And some examples could be what beliefs I have about money, what beliefs I have about business, what beliefs I have about profit, maybe about leadership, maybe about what my definition of a friend is, maybe how I should spending my time, maybe who I allow to garner my attention, whatever, all of those little things are little micro beliefs that I hold at any given moment. And I found it's important to constantly just bring those beliefs into question. And so I want to give you guys a few examples so you know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. When I was at Target, I thought I was pretty good. And I had very high standards. I had high expectations. I worked hard for the most part. I had been promoted a bunch. And so a lot of what I had done previously was continuously reinforced because I continued to get promoted. And so I thought when I left to start a business that because I was, quote, good at Target, maybe some of those things in business would come a little more natural to me. Or maybe I could jump right in, be successful. I had 13 years with a Fortune 30 company. That would give me some good experience that I could use to fuel my entrepreneur journey. And I learned very quickly that I wasn't nearly as good as I thought I was. And frankly, that if I carried the belief I have now about how good I was when I was at Target, it's likely I could have been and grown even more at Target because I would have recognized that, hey, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. And I would have sought out that room to improve. And I would have worked on it and improved and grown. Uh, and it's funny, like what I very quickly learned is the reason why most Fortune 30 companies are Fortune 30 companies is because they developed very good processes, very good systems. And if you have very good training, you can train anyone to do anything and you plug them into the system, and that can be very effective. And you can do that with pretty high paid people. And so it can be tough. Like when I was at Target, I was making for multiple years in a row more than $200,000 a year. And it can be easy to get caught up in like, oh, damn, like I'm pretty good. That's a lot of money. But it's funny, once I broke the belief that I was pretty good, then I just worked really hard to get even better. And what do you know? Because I got better, so did my capacity to earn. And of course, I'm talking about my transition from working at Target into being a real estate entrepreneur. And when I was at Target, I thought people making, $1 million a year, for example, were these special bright unicorns. In that world, the only time I saw that is maybe if you were a super senior vice president or a CEO or just got really, really high up in a very big public company. But after being around a bunch of people who earn $1 million a year, I actually realized that they're really not much different than you or I, right? They're just playing a different game and they're playing the game differently. And it's not that their ability or that their capacity, their mental capacity is the difference or is the catalyst. What I found is that a lot of times it's just purely the willingness for them to get kicked in the face over and over again, and how 99% of the world is not willing to get kicked in the face over and over again. But otherwise, that person and I are pretty similar. And I want to share another example of a belief that I broke in the real estate business. When I started investing full time, I had this belief about wholesaling real estate, and I was pretty ignorant on the topic. But I kind of thought that most wholesalers were, I don't know, maybe a little slimy, or they just took advantage of people, or they constantly just sold deals with no margin on them so that they could pocket as much as they could. And then as time went on and I started doing and progressing my direct to seller real estate business, I became more educated about the business of real estate and what it takes to run an effective direct to seller business. I became more educated on what many sellers need and what many sellers want and what they don't want in their experience of selling their house. And I realized that the belief I had about wholesaling real estate wasn't a belief that was serving me or serving my business or serving prospective clients. All right. And so I started doing it more after I became educated about it. And what do you know? My business started to improve. I started to improve as a business owner. And I want to give you actually a recent and concrete example of this new belief in wholesaling real estate. I closed a deal last week, and in all the deals I do now, after we close, I have a post close exit interview with my clients. And the purpose of that is to one, celebrate with them. We just got across the finish line. But then two, look for ways that I can be a better business owner, look for ways that we can continue to improve our processes and to understand what was important to them in the process. What did they like? And during that interview, which we did the day that his funds hit his account, I had this seller. He said to me among a whole bunch of other things. Real quick, as you guys know, I just recently started this podcast. If you could give it a rating with a quick tap of the thumb, that would mean the world to me. And even more importantly, it could help spread the word to a broader audience, which in turn could help change a life. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the show. He said, Ryan, God works in mysterious ways. And he said, I'll try to talk like him. He said, man, God used you and your team as a vessel to bring a blessing to me, man. And it's going to forever change my life. And I know that, man. And it just made me reflect. Less than 2 years ago, I'd never even done a wholesale deal. And I had this belief about what wholesaling was and that most wholesalers were a little slimy, maybe. And now I just finished this wholesale transaction. And to get that type of feedback from a seller that I cared deeply about in this transaction and that I put a whole bunch of effort into get him to where it is that he wanted to go. Imagine if I still had held strongly to my previous belief about wholesaling real estate and I never had the opportunity to help this guy. And even another example, my real estate business from this past week. When I first started my direct to seller business, I would present all my sellers with one option. Hey, we buy it cash. And some said yes. Many of them said no, and that was it. And if they said no, we'd follow up, but not necessarily to approach a different option with them, but just to see if they wanted to sell their house to us cash. Well, I recently got licensed, and I did that to ensure I was in line with some of the newer regulations in Virginia. And I went on this appointment last week. And in the appointment, after clearly listening to and understanding that this seller's current situation needed something a little bit different, I realized that all of the conditions of her situation weren't really ideal for the option where I buy her house cash. She had time on her hands. In other words, she could afford to delay selling her house if it meant that we could get her some more money. But she was in significant debt. Her husband recently ran off on her and left her with even more additional debt. And she had made some poor financial choices previously, right? She had this really expensive car that she was paying $1,100 a month on that she still had 3 years left. And while, she was in pain, we needed to figure out a way that we could get through this situation and put the most amount of money in her pocket. And she had time on her hands. She could afford to delay a little bit if it meant putting more in her pocket. And because the option of me buying her house cash wasn't quite enough to get her where it is that she needed to go, then we figured out another creative solution. And so what I proposed to her is that she move out of her house. I send my contractors in the house while she still owns it. So I'm renovating the home while I don't hold title. And then I list it. And I do so at a much higher commission rate. And granted, I'm going to put a lot of money into this house. All right. I'm going to put maybe 30 to 40 grand into her house while I don't own it. But I'm going to do this deal where we're still going to make good money because I don't need to close on it and then resell it. That's going to give us the ability to put even more money in her pocket, and it's going to save her tens of thousands of dollars in equity. And we all win. And she's thrilled. Right. And in the beginning, I didn't believe that to be an option because all I knew how to do was buying her house cash. And so, as much as I can every day, I try to constantly think about what beliefs am I currently holding that aren't serving me? What do I currently believe that if I believed differently, even if a little, would make my business better, would make me better? And I actually asked myself that question this past week about someone on my sales team who seemed to be struggling to grasp some of the concepts that we've been working on. And it's amazing how quickly, when we were in the moment or when we were role playing and he wasn't seeming to get it, where my brain just went to like, man, what is going on? Like, what is the obstacle here? And honestly, after I thought about it enough, I realized that it was me that was the problem, right? My ability to teach him what it was that he needed was the issue. I was being a poor teacher. And that belief helped, lead me to think about how I can teach him differently. And it led to some pretty cool things that we're going to do that are going to help him. But imagine what would have happened if I just believed that he was the problem. And I think a lot of business owners do that, or even a lot of bosses do that. Is, the student or the employee is the one with the problem, and me challenging that belief that might have subconsciously surfaced into my brain when I was in that situation with the person on my sales team. And instead, me challenging that belief is actually going to lead to me being able to teach him better. And so I think one of the most effective strategies that I found in order to realize that a belief that I'm holding is preventing me from moving forward is just being hyper aware of the questions that I'm asking myself, or hyper aware of the things that I'm saying to myself or even saying to others. And so whether it's like, man, why isn't this person understanding? Or this guy's such a dick. Or wholesalers are so slimy. Or man, it's hard for me to lose weight because. Or I'm so bad with money. Or I can't do X because I'm so busy with my kids. If we can just be aware or catch ourselves when we say, man, it's just so hard for me to lose weight because of X. And then we say, okay, hold on. That thought entered my brain. It may feel hard for me to lose weight, but what would actually need to happen, despite how hard it is for me still to lose weight, right? Or hang on, I might currently be bad at money. That might be true right now, but that doesn't mean that that's how it has to be forever. What can I learn about money that might serve me or my family or my bank account? And so, if you can just get really conscious about the thoughts that enter your head and then ask yourself really good, productive questions that present really good answers, or they present what's actually capable of happening. And then we realize that belief that we had, that we didn't even realize that we had, but now we do. That belief was the only thing that was actually preventing us from moving forward. And so, what's worked well for me in terms of how I operate with my beliefs, I operate very strongly by the values I hold, and I believe them very strongly. And it is very difficult for those values to be challenged. But when it comes to everything else, I'm hyper aware of what it is that I'm saying to myself. I'm constantly on the lookout for those little beliefs here or there that are preventing me from growing into the person I have the potential to become. Those little things that I say to myself, or that I say to my spouse, or to my mom, whoever, right? And so I'd encourage you, be aware of your little subconscious beliefs that sometimes turn into conscious thought or things that you say, right? Be aware of those little things that you say to yourself. Those are the little things that you can catch yourself occasionally saying, and you can question them as much as you can. And so that text that you sent to your best friend, or what you say when you feel down, or when you're stating a reason for why something is the way that it is, or maybe why something isn't the way that maybe it should be. The more you question, the more you give yourself an opportunity to learn and to correct those little beliefs that you have. And when you are able to correct them, that's when you grow. And that's when you can do some really cool stuff. So I hope that was helpful to you guys. I wanted to talk on that topic. My wife and I actually were discussing this last night, and she encouraged me to make this episode about that. So I hope you guys got some value out of that. Thank you so much for your attention and for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next one.